So I thought we'd talk about the anatomy of a feather. So you know, this piece I've been working on in our videos has a lot of feathers, and I thought we'd kind of talk about, you know, what's the spine, what's the feather, what different types of feathers can we make, all that jazz. And let's get to it. So I actually have bobbin thread in here from doing my embroidery, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. But again, I've got a bunch of projects I need to work on right now, and I just don't want to go back and forth between them, so I do need to lower my foot a little bit. I find that I often need to lower my foot. I don't know if that's because I use a thinner batting than they planned on or what. So, anywho, so feathers. Feathers essentially consist of a spine. So here's a lovely little spine. That's like the vein on a leaf or on an actual feather. Got our spine. And there's almost always some sort of pearl or a loop or something at the top. I'm just going to come on down here, and you can backtrack, you can make a wide spine, whatever you want. Feathers are really variable. Alright, so there are a couple of different ways of making feathers, and we're just going to give you guys a sampler of them, a taste test of feathers. I don't know. So essentially, no, we'll just keep working off this. So essentially they're like a half heart. If you were a little teenage girl doodling in your school, you'd make a little half heart. Let's get a little closer in here. You guys can see better. Might not be the best choice of thread colors. I can see it pretty well, but if you guys can't see it very well, that's not a good choice. Let's see what we can do here. Get you a little height so you look down on it. There we go. So there's kind of a little half heart. It's a little longer than a half heart. And we want that because if we just made a bunch of half hearts going up a stem, it would look a little bit like a large intestine. And we don't want that. That's not beautiful. Necessary, but not beautiful. So you can bring it out longer. But they're essentially like half hearts or teardrops. And right now I am not backtracking on any of these. I'm just kind of keeping them individual. They can be long and skinny. But what you don't want is what I'm about to do right now, where they kind of come in and they're blunt. I don't know if you can see that. Let's lift up the foot a little bit. I think you can see it now. The top edge of the plume hits really sharply into the spine, and it's quite blunt. Karen McTavish talks about making feathers, and you don't want to make them look like a potato chip. And I'm not sure I really follow what she's saying, but I kind of imagine like a Pringles potato chip or something. And that's not beautiful. We don't want this. We want nice gradual taper. So Noemi is saying good night from Spain. I'm not sure if that's from, but buenas noches. That is the limit of my Espanol. There's a couple of different ways of making feathers as well. So I'm just doing kind of your standard plume. You can do what's called a bump back feather, where you make the top side of the plume first, and it bumps against the one beneath it. And then you backtrack over the tip and make your next plume. Let's do a little one here since we're at the tip of our little feather. And we're going to come on back down. Actually, we're going to go around the outside. Sometimes when you feather, you might want to echo around your plumes as a way to get back down to the bottom. I can only feather from bottom to top. There are some very talented people who can feather in any direction, but most people start off working from the bottom to the top. So we were talking about those bump back feathers. Bump back feathers can be very long and curvy. They kind of remind me of a showgirl's fan at like something like, well, I don't know what the places are called. In Vegas, you know, those showgirls. They got those big feather things on their heads and not much else. But those bump back feathers kind of work in pairs. There are a variation of a bump back feather where you come out, you come around, there's your plume, but instead of tracing back, you make a hook. And these are called hooked feathers. And they can be very easy to do when you're beginning. And I think they're kind of fast to do too, so that makes it kind of fun. So let's go ahead and add on to this plume with another spine. There. All right, so we got another spine on here. I think I need to zoom you guys back out just a little bit. So bump back feathers. So let's get the proper pointer out today. The bump back feathers, the hooked feathers. Got kind of our typical feathers, our kind of blunt and ungraceful feathers here, and more feathers of the bump back variety. And you see on the bump back variety, they're right here is where the traveling is, or the backtracking, and it brings it out to the tip versus trying to go down in between each little plume. Excuse me. All right, so let's start with another feather. So it's still your teardrop shape. You don't want to bring your feather plumes all the way back to the point of where you started. You'll get a lot of thread buildup, and it's really hard to travel along your spine if you keep coming back to where you began. So you're just going to taper it into the spine. Curves, when you have a curved spine, can always be kind of tricky because you need to vary your shape so much to get things to fit in. And that's probably the main reason why you don't see me using any kind of a feather template, even though I'm such a big fan of quilting with rulers. I think feathers just need such a variety of shapes that you're not going to see me use a template to do that with. That doesn't mean it doesn't work for other people, but it does not work for me. And I just don't want to have to buy a ton of templates to make that work. So let's do some more of those hooked feathers here on this side. So it's just a little kiss. Another feather type that is really easy for people who are new to free motion quilting is what I call a fern feather. It's not actually what we think of as a feather, but the shape is a lot easier to do. And it's using a shape what I call an open S shape. So it's like an S, but it's been stretched out. So these are kind of pointy fern feathers, like a fern leaf. And that's the basic shape. So I'm going to come out here, and it's a double curve, and then I come back in. Just goes to points. This is a lot easier to stitch if you are new than proper feathers, and I think it looks fabulous. I have done a lot of quilts that use batik fabrics and put these on them. It looks wonderful. So I always have them so they're kind of cupping up. I don't like them if they're cupping down. I think you probably could, but they don't look right to me for how I do it anyway. There. So now we've got some ferny feathers. Alright, so something else I like to do with feathers is use them as a filler. So doing them very small and doing it as a filler. I'm going to just sneak back down this spine a little bit, and I'm going to come out between a set of plumes. I'm going to come out right here, and we're going to start making a feather fill. By starting off with just a nice long feather plume, and then I'm going to use the back side of this feather as a spine. So this is one plume, but then I'm turning this into a spine. By the way, I don't know if I have any of my Aussies watching tonight, and I don't remember the person's name, but someone who is from Australia and has bought from us before called the shop today, and they are vacationing in the States. I think they told my husband they're in Utah right now or Idaho, and they're going to California. And so they placed an order with us over the phone to take some stuff back home. And it was a nice order, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much, whoever you are. I could look up your name, but then I'd have to stop quilting. And you just kind of work your way down and around, making these little shapes. And you can make them big, you can make them small. You want to make sure you're not whipping around the tip of the feather, because that will give you eyelashes, and we don't want that. Let's see, let's get another plume going out. Do some little ones off on this side. But this can be a really fun fill because you can just go all over the place with it. And then if you need to backtrack, you can just kind of follow up along what is essentially the spine and come out wherever you need to. So I'm going to follow around the tip of this one. I'm going to come out here. And let's do one going off this way. But it's a great way to practice those little feather shapes. They're just these little half hearts or curved teardrops. You want to make sure when you're a domestic quilter a regular sewing machine user, that you are not making your feather plumes too long. Let's see if I can zoom back in here. If you make your feathered plumes too long, they can be awkward for your hands. You kind of run out of your range of motion. So my feather, whatever feather plume I do, it's going to fit kind of in this area. I don't want it any bigger because I'm going to have to reposition my hands and it's going to get awkward. So let's finish this out with a smaller couple of plumes and then I'll do some bigger ones. There's a couple other shapes I didn't show you, and there's a lot of different shapes really. So let's come out here. And we're just going to use this as one great big plume, or spine. Just kind of willy-nilly everywhere. Remember, those are those bump back feathers followed by hooked feathers. There's a thing called a molar or dental feather. And it has kind of a double end to it. It's not one of my better shapes for me to do. Let's see if we can get positioned a little bit better here. There we go. But they're just kind of wide. Kind of remind me of foxglove. But I know for some people it reminds them of molars. And it fills in a shape nicely. You know, on these regular feathers, you know, you've got this indentation in between them. And if you're trying to fill out a space evenly, these dental ones really kind of butt up against a line very well. So I'm going to start making them a little bit smaller. You get them a little smaller as you go closer to the top. And then, if you want to, you can always add more to your feathers. So I'm going to work my way down now, but I'm going to pop a little vein into this feather. And if you make your feathers too big, coming in and embellishing them is always a nice thing. So right now I'm just giving them a little spine right down the middle, or a vein. You can come in and do an echo of what's already there. You can do a swirl. Let's come back here. Just whatever your heart desires, you can embellish the feathers again. And just like free motion, I feel like it's a lot like riding a bike. You know, you keep trying, you fall over, you pick yourself up, you keep going. And then some point, you just kind of get it. Like a snap of the fingers, which I can't do with machine gear gloves on.